Good afternoon. We are going to commence with the Tuolumne County Transit Agency meeting. Why is there an echo? Am I talking that loud? Or is the volume up? No? Sounds okay? Okay. I do too. This would be the opportunity for public comment to allow the public to speak on any item not on the printed agenda.
Duke York, Deputy Director in charge of the Roads and Engineering Division. I would like to introduce a new employee for the county. Her name is King McFarland, and she is our new Assistant Director, and she's actually started on Monday. So she's just getting acclimated, and I had thought this would be a great opportunity to introduce her to your commission.
Thank you. Welcome.
Are you going to stand back there? Would you like to say it? No, no. You just want to be known and seen, and that's enough. Okay. Welcome. I'm not doing that to her yet. Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Consent calendar. Item 2, approval of the March 14, 2018 meeting minutes. Item 3, approval of resolution number 46-18, authorizing the executive director to sign low carbon transit operations program certifications and assurances, authorized agent form, and allocation amounts for weekend and special event transit services.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Consent calendar is approved. Regular agenda, whoa, that was fast. Reports. I don't remember an agenda like this. It's been a long time.
We were very close to just canceling this meeting, or.
Any reports under transit at this point?
I do have a few, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I want to start off by giving you an update on the Stockton Road, Washington Street Transit project. That's a project that we have some Prop 1B transit funding for, as well as congestion mitigation air quality funds. The city has issued I want to say a request for proposals, and there was one response from Kimley Horn and Associates. We met with them today to negotiate the contract. Things are moving forward and should be going to the city council in May. So that project is moving forward. It's important that it move forward very expeditiously. It has a very tight timeline. It really needs to be under construction this time next year. So we're happy that the city's moving forward, and need to stay on track on that project.
And we'll get periodic updates?
Yes.
Okay.
So with that, I also have additional reports, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just have a comment. I want to say thank you to the Tuolumne County Transportation Authority Council for this project, and I want to thank the county for participating in approving this project.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay, and then moving right along, I did give you an item up here. I passed it out. It's on your dais. You can read it at your leisure. But it's an important matter to us regarding our fleet conversion to electric vehicles. There's a requirement that new buses after 2020 would be all electric buses. We've sent many letters, many of them authored by Alex, to the Air Resources Board expressing our concerns about electric buses. When you look at the fleet that's available to us to purchase, there's quite a few electric buses that are in the 40, 45-foot range. There's very little product in the smaller buses, like the cutaways, what we call them, the 15-passenger buses that are about half of our service and 25% of the fleet in California. There's virtually no electric buses in that realm that have passed the appropriate safety testing. And there's very few that are in the range of the buses like our ski bus, the 30-passenger buses. And more to add to the problem, many of the buses are made in China, not the United States, and most of our funding requires Buy American. So we have noted that concern like many other transit agencies. We've also noted that we're not really ready at all to service vehicles that are electric. As I mentioned this morning to the Chamber of Commerce, we know how to deal with combustion engines, but we don't, our mechanics don't know how to repair appliances, and these buses are a little bit more like appliances at some point, being electric. So there's a training element involved, there's safety issues, there's the infrastructure to charge all these buses that we need to work through. So we're going to send another letter supporting the delay of implementation, which is what ARB is proposing, but encouraging them in the years between now and whenever the new implementation date is to free up some funding for readiness planning so that we can secure a grant to really figure out what we need for infrastructure for our bus systems to electrify and what are our training needs, and just really get an idea of what's going to take. So that's where we're headed with that. We're happy to see that Air Resources Board is showing some flexibility here.
Okay, Randy?
Yeah, one quick question and a suggestion. One is, how will electric buses handle your trip up the hill to Dodge Ridge, for instance?
Not particularly well.
That's what I suspected.
Minor grade will be a
but I
big
didn't think I
challenge.
heard you say that. Okay, look, I know Randy Hanvelt really well. I'm John Gray today, but if I know Randy Hanvelt really well, and I happen to know he's going to be at a RCRC board meeting about 2 weeks, and I think this is probably a common problem with other similar counties, and love to be able to take that with me and put it out there and get some additional backing for that. I mean, look, reasonableness is reasonableness, and I understand what CARB does, but they got to look at the picture, and support numbers may help us.
Yeah.
So if you get it to me, I'll be glad to
We'll
hear
make
it.
sure you get that, and maybe we can get a bridge.
I need it by the
to
23rd at the latest.
We'll do.
Okay, and if I get a chance, then I can clarify any things with you. And
Yeah, we should be able to
Make it
get this
happen.
out in the next few days.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, and then additional reports, if I may. Supervisor Gray and myself did attend the YARTS meeting earlier this week on Monday. They continue to welcome us as a voting member. We're not a voting member yet, but they're certainly encouraging it. As I mentioned previously, we're working through the short-range transit plan. It will identify what a fair share contribution might look like for Tuolumne County's participation as a voting member of YARTS. As I told them, we are interested in becoming a voting member, but my board isn't quite ready to write a blank check, and we need to know what the financial burden would be. So that looks positive. We also were able to give input on their emergency preparedness plan. We had an incident last year where a YARTS bus it was dealing with a fire after going up to Yosemite Valley on its way back. 120 was closed, had to be routed all the way through 140 down to Merced and then back up, and the driver was hitting his maximum hours limits. Mike, you might know how that works, being a former CHP. And so we had issues with what do we do with riders when he's hitting his hours mark. And so we're getting a contingency plan that'll be in place for this year so that if they hit their hours, as soon as they realize they're going to run out of hours, they're calling their dispatch. Dispatch is calling Kathy Metcalf and myself, and then we can do contingency planning, so drivers don't get.
And they have
riders don't
backup drivers en route or something like that?
We can respond pretty fast.
Okay,
So our team is very good down at the transit office.
okay.
And then finally, you have asked me in the past to keep you updated on our audits. As you might recall, we have had some audits that on our Transit Development Act audits, as well as our state controllers reports, that did not go in a timely manner from our auditor. And we've actually been fined in the past, and you've asked me to report on that, and we have not met the deadlines. We got an extension on the state controllers report, but we haven't met that deadline either, so I'm making you aware of that.
You're talking current?
Currently, yeah.
Okay,
I know Ms. Batista is working hard to address it, and she's got a lot going on, but I just wanted to update my board on that.
okay.
And that's all I have for reports.
All right. Betty, anything under transit? No? All All right, any other reports? All right, we will adjourn the Tuolumne County Transit Agency and give us a minute to switch gears. All right. We'll begin the Tuolumne County Transportation Council meeting and follow the agenda. This will be the opportunity for oral communication for the public to speak on any item not on the printed agenda. All right, seeing none, we'll move to the consent calendar. Item 2, approval of the March 14, 2018 meeting minutes. Okay, got a motion?
Second?
Second, any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3, approval of the Center for Sustainable Energy's contract agreement for the Central Sierra Zero Emission Vehicle Readiness Plan with a budget not to exceed $169,738.
Mr. Chairman, earlier this morning, we received information from the Center for Sustainable Energy that they'd like to make some modifications to the contract. We'd like to continue this item to next month so that we can have a chance to review those changes with our legal counsel.
All right. Thank you. We don't need to vote on that, right? Okay. All right, so I,
Just need consensus.
consensus, everybody okay with that, holding that for a month?
Yes.
Okay. Item 4 then, approval of work order number 1 for Wood Rogers cost proposal for the State Route 49 from Jamestown to Columbia Complete Streets Corridor Plan Grant with a budget not to exceed $175,900.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Alex Padilla to present this item.
Hi, Council. Last year, the TCTC was awarded a Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant from Caltrans, and as part of the Caltrans's approved scope of work requirements, the TCTC stated we would use our on-call consultant, Wood Rogers, to help produce the project deliverables as part of this grant. If you recall, last year, or in November of 2016, the TCTC approved a master agreement with Wood Rogers. So as TCTC staff sent or requested a work order to Wood Rogers, and as part of your attachment, you have Wood Rogers' cost proposal, scope of work, and project timeline. And as part of this grant effort, we have a steering committee, and the list of steering committee members we have provided to you as a separate attachment. We have seven steering committee members who participated 2 weeks ago and recommended approval of Wood Rogers' cost estimate. They include members from the CRA, Duke York, the City of Sonora, Tim Miller, Columbia College, Trevor Stewart, Betty Kibble from Caltrans, and Patrick Shabbat from Sonora Union High School. Also, Greg Martin from the States Park was attended as well. Just a kind of note for the public as well, as part of the December agenda, you guys approved the steering committee members, and 3 members are considered vacant, and those would be from the public. So we are also looking for some more members who want to participate as part of this larger 2-year planning grant.
Question. Have you set the meeting dates yet and times?
We had our first steering committee meeting 2 weeks ago, but we've tentatively we're planning about once every quarter,
Okay, once a quarter.
with the caveat that we are planning on meeting next Monday,
At what time?
2 o'clock,
Okay. And where?
in the CRA building, 3rd floor.
Okay.
So have you reached out to the supervisor for Jamestown and Columbia, Jamestown Promotion Club, Columbia Chamber? I'm just kind of throwing some ideas out there.
Probably not adequately. We need to do that a little
Okay.
better. We'll double down on that effort.
Okay.
Also, the other attachment we provided is the Complete Streets Corridor Plan map, which you guys should have 11 by 17. We also have on the wall a larger 24 by 36 map, and this is just a draft of the project area boundaries. But essentially, the project starts in Jamestown along SR 49 108 and travels along 49 into downtown Sonora and continues into Parrots Ferry Road and follows Sawmill Flat Road into Columbia College. And is one of our project goals for this project is to develop a complete streets corridor plan, which we're hoping will help reduce traffic congestion and help improve multimodal transportation by finding a consensus on a preferred non-motorized transportation route on or off the state highway system, which will connect Jamestown to Columbia and Sonora to Columbia College. And if you look at the map does show the red, which represents the state highway, the yellow, which represents the complete streets portion for the city and county roads, and the green dotted lines include proposed study areas for the non-motorized potential alignments. And if you guys look at your Wood Rogers quarter plan proposal scope of work, there are essentially 5 main project deliverables. They include an existing conditions report, which will essentially look at the existing conditions of the project area boundaries and assess what infrastructure is already there for all modes of transportation, for bicycling, traffic, for transit, and look at where the needs are currently and in the future. Wood Rogers will be completing new pedestrian bicycling counts, a safety study, an overview of kind of a gap analysis on where sidewalks and where bicycling infrastructure is potentially needed to connect these various communities together. Also, another task is the public outreach. So one of the things that Caltrans requires as part of the transportation plan grants is a public outreach effort. So we're planning on having 2 community outreach meetings. We're also going to have a walking tour as well to assess how suitable the existing conditions are for walking. And we're going to tally all that in a final public participation report. And another task as well that Wood Rogers will be completing will be assessing kind of a future build-out for the project area boundaries and assessing what the future needs are for the next 20 years and seeing what would be the future infrastructure, the future improvements that would be needed for a complete build-out. So that would include road widening, sidewalks, bicycle lanes if necessary. And another really key component of this project is looking at what the, once we've completed all this effort, we'll be looking at a list of potential projects and seeing where those needs are on the state highway and on the local roadway system. And Wood Rogers will be compiling site plans. They'll be compiling a non-motorized route and a transit stop turnouts. It's kind of this future conceptual renderings and designs. And we're hoping this will be a better way to show off these needs and capital improvement projects. Also, a key component too is we'll also have planning level cost estimates to help build that bridge from planning to implementation. And then finally, we're going to gather all that information together into one final corridor plan report. And we're hoping Wood Rogers is included in their project schedule to complete it in about a year. And that'll include presentations to the TCTC as well.
Okay, if I may just kind of tag on to what Alex has told you, a couple things I'd like to just go through is, first I want to say that this is through a sustainable transportation planning grant. These are not funds that can be used for road maintenance or other purposes. So I know sometimes the public gets a little concerned when we spend so much money on planning and not our roads, but this is earmarked by the state just for planning purposes. And I also want to mention that there is a second plan going on in this corridor. That's the congested corridor plan that Caltrans is doing. This grant was sought before SB1 was put into place. The purpose of this plan is to take a lot of the policies that are in the general plan circulation element or projects that are conceived in the recreation master plan or our bike and trail plan and figure out what's feasible, what's not. What is the plan on this corridor that is going to work? So that's the purpose of it. A lot of that is in reaction to Caltrans's new policy that they have a priority to not only serve traffic needs, but all the users on the state highway system, recognizing that the state highway is oftentimes main streets in our small towns, and there's cyclists and pedestrians and transit that all need to be accommodated. And Caltrans has a new policy that as they build out projects, they're going to look to local plans. And if local plans identify other improvements on that corridor, they're going to do their best to build out the complete street with walkways and transit stops and whatnot. They're no longer just going to build lanes of traffic for vehicles. It's a policy shift, and this will allow us to make sure they're in step with what our local needs are. As I mentioned, there's a second plan subsequent to SB1 being passed, which provided funding for the congested corridor program. It was recognized that Sonora has a lot of congestion. It's one of the rural areas where maybe there's some funding for through the congested corridor program could be sought, but a prerequisite to seeking those, obtaining those funds is being identified as an important project in the congested corridor plan. So two separate efforts, but we are working with Caltrans. We've kind of divvied up the work. They're focusing a little bit more on the traffic components and congestion relief. We're focusing a little bit more on the alternative modes, the bikeways, the transit and whatnot. But ultimately, our plans are going to pretty much say the same things in the end. So that's a good effort. They are helping us. They've agreed to put in some additional traffic counts for our walkways. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the reports. So we're working together very well and spending our money in a complementary way, I guess is the best way of putting it. And then I just wanted to finally say that this will help us as well. I think some of our board members are aware of CEQA reform and SB 743 that moves away from level of service on the highway and mitigating for level of service, but instead reducing vehicle miles traveled. This will provide us a plan with cost estimates that may make it easier for Duke and I to mitigate traffic impacts consistent with CEQA reform. So it kind of gives us some of the basic information, not everything we need. There's a tremendous effort left to be done. It's already identified as work in our work program, but this will be useful for some of that VMT reduction. So I just want to touch on some of those things. Other than that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? I don't have any questions.
Darren, I just have a couple, I think a couple. On page 4 of 7, talks about 2 community workshops. And I understand that there are 3 additionals with council, commission, business community, like chambers and what have you. But when I saw the 2 community, at the time I saw it in print, it looked reasonable. And then I see this diagram, with Jamestown, Sonora, and Columbia College. And I'm wondering if maybe there should be 3 community workshops, one in Jamestown, one in Sonora, one at the college maybe. College is always coming to us talking about, there's not a lot, their perception is there's not a lot of communication, not a lot of understanding maybe. So what do you guys think?
We can certainly add it. I think we can make it work within our budget.
Okay,
I think that would be helpful. I'm sure the city would like to have one.
right.
We can add a third. We'll talk to Wood Rogers, but I'm sure we can work through the budget to do it. There's a lot of room in this budget.
Okay. The other one was at the bottom of page 6 of 7. I think it's a misunderstanding, but I just want to make sure it's not going forward. They're talking about a public presentation at Transportation Council, City of Sonora. Then they talk about a Tuolumne County Commission meeting. Did they mean Board of Supervisors?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Just want to catch that early so they don't miss that.
I guess the planning commission would know what the heck we're doing there, huh?
Yeah, they probably would. Yeah.
Thank you for catching that.
Any questions?
Often they're called commissioners in other places.
Yeah.
Darren or Alex, the green dots, are those, I'm assuming something's already there in regards to those non-motorized trails?
Not physically there, but on a
No?
plan.
Oh, they're not there's nothing?
I mean, some may be a trail that somebody's walking.
Okay.
But it's probably in our recreation master plan, mention that particular trail or walk area or circulation plan, and we need to, so what we tried to do is show all the potential routes that need to be investigated by our consultants
Okay.
before we determine, okay, this is the one that's most feasible for a public trail.
Okay.
If you know of other trails, let us know. We can add it to our map to make sure they get properly vetted.
I did have one more question.
Okay.
In what's provided to us, it talked about steering committee recommended approving the Wood Rogers cost proposal with some modifications to address the concerns. I'm just curious what those modifications or concerns were.
One was to add a grade trail in here, one of those green dashed lines. We also heard interest from the representative of the high school that they'd like to get a special emphasis on the 5-legged intersection at Straws Flat 49 Columbia Way. So we've added some language to make sure that that gets a special consideration and write-up in the report and review. We also had some comments from the state park about connectivity to the state parks. I don't remember any, what was the other suggestions? What's that?
Main Street.
Go ahead.
So yeah, so the steering committee just made some minor little adjustments. One of those, they wanted to see Main Street as a complete street study, and they also recommended including Crooked Lane, doing a little study incorporating a trail that would connect that with Campo Seco Road.
So we just made some modifications.
Okay.
to make sure that,
You're not on.
as they attend our meetings, they're getting something out of it for
Okay.
their agencies and addressing
Good to
their
know.
agencies' concerns.
Excellent, good to know. Okay. All right. Any public comments?
Well, I'm glad to see this getting off the ground. This is loud, geez. But
You gotta be up here.
we have no charging stations in the city of Sonora. And we have some fairly large mall areas that some were recently repaved. They're falling apart, by the way. And there's no charging stations there. And I know there's been a concern, people have talked to me out at Columbia College that they have more electric vehicles than they have charging stations. So charging is becoming an issue up here for people using that mode of transportation. And I don't think we should be waiting a year to plan something. And then as far as Columbia College goes, I had some words with their Board of Trustees at their meeting when they were up here, and I met with their chancellor. And Columbia College needs to get off their duff and become a little bit more proactive about participating in the community, except for sitting there whining, complaining that nobody comes to them. So perhaps that will change the interviews for the next president or next week. I hope people come, but they need to, and I invited a lot of people to come to this meeting, and as you can see, they're all here.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I'll move approval of work order number 1 for Wood Rogers cost proposal.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. Whoa. We're on to reports already? If I'd known that, I would have tried to set a record. I'm just kidding.
Good luck on that. Too late. It is too late.
Yeah, now I can't
We
control
had a
it. When
12-minute meeting one
when it
time,
goes
so-
to reports, it's like, oh, hi, Duke. All right, Darren, what do you got?
I got a couple updates. First, I believe I passed out a memo here, a letter, excuse me, that we sent to the city. We're going to be in front of the Vision Sonora Committee meeting, or committee tomorrow morning, going through this. As you might recall, the TCTC provided $28,000 for Wood Rogers to assist the city in addressing safety needs in downtown Sonora on Washington Street and help coordinate any proposed safety improvements with Caltrans. We've had quite a bit of input from the community through a series of public comment meetings and workshops. And from that, what we gathered seemed to have support for in the community are bulb outs and crosswalks with flashing lights. And within those bulb outs, we would have perhaps a planter with a tree, probably a raised planter in a box or something like that. A bench for people to relax, make things a little more accommodating to the pedestrian, a trash can receptacle, as well as street light. And I've given you a graphic of what that might look like. We did review this with Caltrans. Was it last week, Betty, we met on this? Gosh, the time's just flying by. We met with Caltrans' team to review this proposal. They were very supportive of our efforts. And the word I think I heard multiple times was we support it 100%. But that said, they did throw a few design hurdles at us that we'll work through. They did say that their standard is a 40-foot school bus that is their design standard. Now, you'll see on one of these graphics a vehicle that turns, that's a 40-foot school bus, and it uses up pretty much the whole road to make that turning movement. We've pointed that out to Caltrans, expressed concern. We've appealed that requirement. And yesterday I met with Vu, who's their operations engineer, and if anybody knows Vu, he's tough as nails on these things. Vu was very accommodating and said that it's their design standard, they're required to tell us this, but all they need us to do is go through the design exception process and show that it won't work, and that the only way to make it work would be to remove these historically significant buildings. So he was very accommodating. He just needs to do his job and help us work through the process. So it's not we must meet this standard. This is our design standard. If you can't meet it, then you have to go through the design exception process. Then they
Darren,
also,
couldn't you just put a non-bus route signs up for something like that?
Oh, no.
well, you have to give them a route, and that's another issue that we brought to
Well,
their,
but how many 40-foot buses use Bradford to get onto Washington?
or Washington to Bradford. You're exactly what I pointed out in my letter to the district director, is that the operators of these vehicles understand their turning capabilities, and they choose other routes. Fire trucks generally choose other routes when responding to emergencies. Transit buses, well, transit buses actually make these turns, and we do take up the whole road, but we wait for traffic to clear and hold back, and the community is very accommodating in that regards. Delivery trucks, kind of much the same. They either choose a different route or they, just wait for traffic to clear, and traffic is pretty accommodating again. So I think I'm agreeing with you, George, and we've made that case to Caltrans, and they're accepting of our answers. And in fact, I would go so far as to note that when you apply for one of these active transportation program grants on the state highway, all that's required is that you get a letter from Caltrans that says it meets the requirements of the state highway system. That's what's the minimum requirement, that you have that with your grant application. Caltrans has informed us they're going well beyond that to say they support this. This is an important project to the district. And so that's taken a little longer to get that letter. That's not something they do on every project. Hopefully we'll have that before we go to the city council meeting with this project. So we have more than basic support, but real support for this project. They see the need.
Thanks.
Flashing crosswalks. They did point out that it has to comply with the MUTCD requirements, which is 40 people using the crosswalk over 2 hours of the day. They've agreed to put out their cameras on crosswalks at these different crosswalks so that we can determine if it meets that requirement. So that's going to be the standard that we need to meet. I think some are crosswalks, but probably not all of them are going to meet that standard. We'll see.
Well, let us know when they got the cameras going, and we'll send people
Yeah.
back and forth out there.
Sonora High School will fill the need real fast.
We'll have them out there on parade day. How's that?
Yeah, right.
I have a question. On this project that we're talking about now, Darren, will you be,
40 in 2
will
hours, or
we be able to use some of the statistics that will be generated through this, the Jamestown to Columbia Complete Streets Corridor Plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, that's how we're getting the cameras. We're getting it out of the Jamestown. It was already in the Jamestown corridor plan. We're going to use it to make this project go forward
Okay.
instead of adding budget.
Good.
So I think that's it. I just wanted to give you an
Oh.
update on that project. We'll be in front of the Vision Sonora Committee tomorrow, and then followed by City Council presentation probably in May. And then hopefully get direction to move forward with preparing a grant application and cost estimates.
We might want to consider presenting it to the merchants meeting also in this month.
Do you remember the date on that?
I don't have my,
I'll
they-
check in with you on that. then.
it's the fourth Wednesday, whatever that
Okay.
date is.
I should also point out that these bulb outs, we understand parking's a big issue for downtown. I walked all the bus stops, all these intersections, and noted that there's pretty much red curb at each of the locations pretty extensively that we're going to work within. We think we can really minimize the amount of parking spaces that are impacted through this effort. We may need to move a crosswalk to one side of the intersection or the other to stay within existing red curbs. We won't know the actual number until we get in the design phase, but we really do think we can stay within a lot of existing red zones.
I was getting a question up here, and I actually found the answer, and it looks a little more optimistic for us. At least 40 pedestrians regularly use the crossing during each of any 2 hours, not necessarily consecutive, during a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
So,
We want to make sure they're good spring days when the weather's beautiful, and maybe a Friday when everybody's been paid, they're going to lunch and whatnot. And all those things are working in our favor.
just mark them.
Second Saturday?
Cross here.
Yeah. We'll see if we can leave them out there for a while, like a week,
Oh,
and
sorry, Betty.
catch the
You're not supposed
best
to hear
hours.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it for update on that. We did do a constructability review, 95% constructability review with Caltrans. That's for the Yosemite Junction safety project, which will be the high T traffic signal design down there. I can explain that if need be, but otherwise the project's moving forward and seems to be tracking right along. And we appreciate Caltrans putting in that important safety project. We've been
So,
asking for it for a few years.
Timeline, any idea yet?
Looks like this summer, go to construction. That's what I recall. Do you remember any different than that?
You said this summer?
Yosemite Junction?
That's pretty soon.
As far as when they're going to start construction on
Yeah.
that?
You don't remember? All right, well, I'll follow up with an email to you. I'll get
Okay,
the date on
sounds
that.
good.
We're really close to getting it out to bid.
Oh,
I mean, they're at the 95% design level, and environmental's pretty much done.
speaking about projects, anything with the ramps? Standard and, am I saying that right? Mono? 108?
Peaceful Oaks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we,
Peaceful Oaks.
you know, it's, we've got a new project manager. He's doing a good job of keeping the project on track, keeping the permits alive. We're all disappointed about the 1-year delay. Like I said at the last meeting, virtually every project in the state is seeing cost increases, and they only have a finite amount of money in the early years of the STIP, and so we've been pushed out yet another year. I'm kind of trying a little on that, but I don't think I'm gonna get much traction on moving it back forward. In the meantime, I did give them the go-ahead to work with PG&E and get PG&E to relocate facilities as necessary, because we all know PG&E can sometimes cause delays in construction, then end up costing you more because they've got construction delays. So we're going to get that out of the way while we await our construction funds. PG&E will get all their work done ahead of time. And if necessary, I assured the district we would use some of our right-of-way excess sales money if necessary. And then just briefly, I want to mention that we met earlier this week with the district to address safety issues out at Chicken Ranch and 49. So we've got a project to address that, and when appropriate, we'll bring forward a project to the council and perhaps the Board of Supervisors. We are talking with David and keeping everybody in CRA in the loop, but for now, that's about all I can say on it. We're addressing it. That's all I have for reports.
Okay. Betty Kibble.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. The only report I have is that we hope to get a letter of support out next week for the 49 pedestrian safety improvements project.
Okay. Excellent. Any other reports before I adjourn the meeting? Come on up, Duke.
I guarantee I'm going to be shorter than Darren.
Oh,
I'm not going to be.
don't
I'm probably
make
going to
a
be longer than
promise.
Betty.
We're
so.
going to time you now, you said
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I just wanted to, I think everyone's aware of all the storm damage we've been having. We have been working diligently to repair those. The current estimates are up to about 7.8 million. And unfortunately, some of the more rural areas are, we're still finding out about some of these roads, but we are opening back up. Priest Coulterville Road is now accessible. It's got a one-lane portion of the road in a couple of spots, but for the most part, it's open. We're assisting when they close the portion of Merced.
Is that to residents only or everybody?
Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody. We had a lot of calls from our local CHP regarding problems dealing with the road closure in Merced County on Dry Creek on J59, and there are a lot of lost people out there. So I worked with Kenny Weeks from Caltrans and my staff, and we were able to put some more signs out there, to wayfinding signs for a lot of these people that are getting lost. And unfortunately, there isn't a lot of signage that directs people on that route now that it's closed, and we really haven't received any idea as to when that repair is going to be done on J59. In terms of what the county road department's currently working on, some of the biggest projects are Hardin Flat Road Bridge. It will be closed between April and November. This is 100% funded through the bridge program. This bridge was damaged in the rim fire, and we're just now getting to it. Fortunately, the Berkeley camp also burned up, so they haven't rebuilt yet, and they are the people that were right there at the bridge. But there will be, we have talked to the local fire agencies. They're aware of the fact that this road will be cut off just for this summer. Some of the other projects that are of note are the Jacksonville Bridge. Methacrylate treatment. We're doing a chip seal on Jacksonville Road, Algerine Road, and Seco Street. And we continue to deal with the 2017 storm damage. We have 4 major projects left over from that. And so that's all I have to report at this time.
Duke, I have a favor to ask. You know, we were talking about J59 this morning in Merced County, and I was wondering if you could work with our radio station so they could add it back into their traffic report. It is a major road for a lot of people up here going south, and by the same token from Fresno coming northeast. And you heard Sonora CHP Sergeant talking about all the calls they're getting.
Yes.
The radio station, I understand, is putting out Mariposa, but I don't think they realize how critical the J59 inter-county roadway is used by people going south to LA or south to Fresno or Bakersfield, or vice versa coming back this way.
Okay. I will put together try to get a clear picture of all the detour routes and all the signage that's out there. The problem is that road cuts through about 3 or 4 counties. So anyhow, that complicates it, and none of them are the state highway.
And, you know, I'm going to say this, it's not a marketing issue, but because and I make that trip quite often, or my wife does, or we're going down to see the kids or what have you, she actually got stuck Friday. Mr. Supervisor Hanvelt's aware of this because he tried to help me figure out what was going on, because I had no clue it was closed. Friday right after the storm. She was coming back from Fresno. Later on, a few days later, I figured out the app Waze, W-A-Z-E, does route you around. It knows the bridge is out. On the other hand, Google Maps still does not, and I couldn't figure out how to tell Google Maps the bridge is out. And I've had other friends that have used Google, and I think Google will take them to no, I'm sorry. Trying to remember the other road. Yeah, I had some friends going to Fresno, Kingsbury, it routed them to Bonds Flat.
Merced Falls
and
Road
Merced
is
Falls.
being used in Bonds
But
Flat.
something told them to do that, and I don't think it was Google. I think it was Apple Maps. So just a word to people, there are some that work and some that don't quite work so well, and I had a hard time trying to figure out how to update Google Maps or tell them. But Waze figured it out. Somehow they take the information from users much more readily.
The length of time for this dialogue doesn't count against me on my report, does it?
No, it does not. Does not.
Good point. I was sensitive.
All right, any other reports? Seeing none, looks like the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.